Okay, guys, let's roll. Got a lot to get into. I did say that I'd prepare a script, but when I was gathering the data for this video, I realized that there was going to be too much content to put into just one video unless it was exceptionally long. So I'm going to break it up into three parts. Each one can be watched on its own, but it's best if you view them in the order. This will be Islam, Torture of the Grave, Part 1. Okay? I told you I'd been around for quite a while, and I also mentioned on the very first video that I'm a former member of the British National Party. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm extremely proud of the time I gave to the British National Party, and I'm proud of the people I worked with. They were true patriots with backbones and spine, and we're going to need people like that now. Nigel Farage doesn't want people like me, and he doesn't want people like my former comrades in the British National Party. If you want to know how they were brought down, Nigel Farage says it was he who brought down the BNP. That's bullshit. He was brought down by government agents and paid infiltrators who sowed division and ripped the party apart. That was one of the last times until now that Britain had a chance to change the way it was going. Anyhow, moving on, that's history. There's a civil war coming, and you know who it's going to be between. If you were going to have an enemy, then you better know everything you can about him. So let's start with the way they think, shall we? What do they fear? Well, I'll tell you what they fear. They fear death. They fear death more than they fear life. And when you see this article, you'll understand why. I said I'd been around for a while. Some people say, oh God, what does he know? Well, I've been researching these people since, as you can see from the article there in front of you, it was written in November 2007, when I first became active for the BNP and opened up a supporting site. I resigned from the BNP because I did not want the things I said to be used against the BNP in a detrimental way. For the record, Lord Bethel loathed me and often brought me up in discussions. Okay, so here we go. What have we got? Torture of the grave haunts many Muslims. I wrote it Wednesday, 21st of November, 2007. Okay, the caption is Exploding Turnips Fear Death by Natural Causes. I'm going to read it to you, but at any time you can just pause and read yourself and then skip through me blathering. Reposted as part of Islam Awareness Week. I had often wondered why Muslims would choose to blow themselves to bits all over various parts of the world. I always thought there was a bit more to it than the 72 virgins, but in my ignorance of Islam, I wrongly assumed that it was just the brainwashing of the cult that turned them into exploding turnips. And to a certain extent it is. But it is not the desire to get a girl that makes them into self-destroying monsters of evil. It is the fear of dying a natural death. Yep, the fear of dying makes them blow themselves up. Sounds crazy? All will become clear. Leo Alvelvi has written an excellent article on what happens to the majority of Muslims who do not blow themselves to pieces. So what do Muslims think happens after death? Read on and you will understand why the fruit bats act like something out of Mission Impossible and self-destruct. Here we go. This is Leo's words, okay? I'm going to read his words. Now, it's quite long. I may well skip some and let you pause the video. Okay, 2007, remember. Hardly a week goes by without front page news of Muslims dying somewhere in the world in a violent way. Despite all the media attention, there is little understanding among non-Muslims of Islamic views of death and the afterlife. Everyone knows, of course, that after death, martyrs go straight to the Garden of Eden, where they recline on couches, savor meats and fruits, and enjoy the company of dark-eyed houris, while listening to the sound of flowing rivers, a bit like our politicians. But what happens to the vast majority of Muslims who do not die as martyrs? And here's where it gets interesting. You've got to remember, these people really believe this. According to Islamic doctrine, between the moment of death and the burial ceremony, the spirit of a deceased Muslim takes a quick journey to heaven and hell, where it beholds visions of the bliss and torture awaiting humanity at the end of the days, similar in a way to Christian beliefs. By the time corpse handlers are ready to wash the body, the spirit returns to earth to observe the preparations for burial and to accompany the procession towards the cemetery. But then, before Earth is piled upon the freshly dug grave, an unusual reunion takes place. The spirit returns to dwell within the body. Not very pleasant. In the grave, the deceased Muslim, this composite of spirit and corpse, encounters two terrifying angels, Munkar and Nakir, recognized by their bluish faces, their huge teeth, and their wild hair. These angels carry out a trial to probe the soundness of a Muslim's faith. If the dead Muslim answers their questions convincingly, and if he has no sin on record, then the grave is transformed into a luxurious space that makes bearable the long wait until the final judgment. But if a Muslim's faith is imperfect, or if he has sinned during life, for example, by failing repeatedly to undertake purity rituals before prayer, then the grave is transformed into an oppressive, constricting space. Sounds terrifying to me. The earth begins to weigh down heavily upon the sentient corpse until the ribcage collapses. Worms begin to nibble away at the flesh, causing horrible pain. This torture does not continue indefinitely. It occurs intermittently and ends at the very last with the resurrection, when God may well forgive Muslims who have endured the punishment. Surely this violence sounds medieval. Belief in the torture of the grave indeed stretches way back in history. It appears in 8th century epitaphs and in early Islamic traditions, which elevate this belief to the status of dogma. Pious Muslims today continue to adhere to this belief. In evocations, funeral prayers, sermons, and popular literature, Muslims are frequently reminded to heed this punishment. Early Christians used to do the same, didn't they, in our churches and chapels, especially in the Welsh chapels. It was all fire and brimstone there, and you better come to church, donate, or you will burn in the pits of hell. Anyhow, on with Islam. Anecdotal evidence suggests that many of them take it very seriously. The psychologist Ahmed M. Abdul Khalek, who studied anxieties about death among Arab youth, has found that preoccupation with the torture of the grave remains acute. Egyptians in Kuwait, he polled, worried about this torture more than they feared losing a dear relative or succumbing to a serious fatal disease. I'll tell you about the families of these turnips who self-destruct in another episode. Recently, an Islamist website posted a picture of an 18-year-old man exhumed by the order of his father. Only 3 hours had passed since his burial, but already his corpse appeared aged and bruised. I won't show you that image in this video, guys. I'll show it to you in the next one. Scientists, according to the story, affirmed that this was caused by the torture of the grave, and the father explained that his son had been a sinner. Many Muslims commenting on the picture took it as a sign from God to stop sinning. They can't do that, can they? And as a reminder to pray assiduously for relief from punishment of the tomb. Several doubted the reality of the picture, prompting the author of the website to remove the posting and apologize for it. But even a skeptic who challenged the scientific evidence professed in his public forum his belief in the reality of the torture of the grave. Muslims can escape the torture of the grave, and you can guess how, by dying as martyrs. In Islam, the category of a martyr does not belong exclusively those who die fighting in God's path. According to Islamic tradition, Muslims who die in a fire, by drowning in the collapse of a building, or some other way involving great physical suffering, merit the rank of martyrs in the afterlife. Always claiming victim status. This means that immediately after death, the spirits do not return to dwell within mutilated or burnt corpses. Instead, they enter the Garden of Eden, where they receive new bodies, perfectly reformed, so as to enjoy the rewards of martyrdom until the resurrection. Though Those who have lost a relative in a violent and shocking death in the bombings in Baghdad, for instance, may find some consolation in this belief. Goes on to give the man's qualifications and the name of the book, Muhammad's Grave, Death Rites and the Makings of Islamic Society. Okay, I'm bringing the video to an end now, guys. So now we know they take the coward's way out because they cannot face their imagined judgment. Crazy cult, crazy people who will kill a lot of us because of their fear of death. They're not brave at all, boys. They're cowards. Cowards, cowards, cowards. Oh. Help put an end to their fear, join the British National Party. Well, them boys are gone. Join Advance UK. And if they don't like it, ask me to resign. I'm going to speak the truth. I promise you. I give you my word. You've been listening to Paul Morris on the Voice of the British Resistance. Tomorrow I will publish part 2 of Islam and the Torture of the Grave. Thank you. Be seeing you on the beach.